Don't trip, you know? I know things is hard right now. You looking for a job. You out there hustling.
So is the trial of Mayor Omar Bradley a witch hunt? Omar Bradley is the one that shut down the former Compton corrupt police department. A few years back, Reggie Wright Jr. reached out to who he thought was Omar Bradley on Facebook and told him that he could trace this entire witch hunt back to the corrupt Compton Police Department, and that if he hadn't pursued the Compton Police Department, that he would still be mayor. This past week, in testimony, former City Controller Doug Sanders said that he referred this to the Compton Police Department, who referred this case against Omar to the District Attorney's Office. So this whole case now can trace back to the District Attorney's Office, and it was at the behest of the Compton Police Department. So recently, 2010, there was a PBS thing, and the city of Compton was found to be making illegal payments to city council members for them sitting on commissions. That was 2010. The DA's office immediately sought to do an investigation, and they promised full transparency, number one, and number two, they promised that there would be no special consideration given because at the time, Mayor Eric Paradin was also an assistant district attorney. And here's how that shook down. It took 5 years for the district attorney's office to send a letter over to Compton admonishing them to stop this illegal activity. It takes 5 years to write a letter? That sounds like special treatment to me. But this goes back further to the DA's office kicking cases in drug crimes. And when the DA's office would kick a case, there was a loophole in the tracking of evidence, and that evidence was no longer tracked and ended up sold back on the streets by the corrupt Compton Police Department. And so Mayor Omar Bradley was the one that stared down the Compton Police Department. And this all stemmed over a gun that had flowed through the hands of Reggie Wright Jr. and Reggie Wright Sr. through Death Row Records that was used to shoot a police officer. And the DA's office so is implicated in these cases, in this scandal of kicking these cases so that the drugs could be resold on the streets by the Compton Police Department. And so now you have these cases being kicked. You have Doug Sanders, who's testified that the entire witch hunt against Omar Bradley came from the Compton Police Department through the DA's office. And so we have connected the dots now. We now know that the DA's pursuit of Omar Bradley traces right back to Reggie Wright Jr., just like Reggie Wright Jr. said. And it traces back to the corrupt Compton Police Department. This coming week, Mayor Omar Bradley has the conclusion of his trial, and Judge George Lamelli is hearing the case, and it will be interesting to see what happens in the case. It's a jury trial, and it's supposed to last this week. It may get extended, we don't know. We will continue to follow this story. I just want to remind you that there were 200 kilos of cocaine that went missing that we know about. We don't know about other kilos of cocaine that did not show up on any reports. These are just reports that they found when they were doing their investigation into the corrupt Compton Police Department. It ceased being an investigation about the missing gun that shot a police officer, and it became an investigation about the cocaine. And Omar Bradley was the one who wanted to disband the police department, and at a last-ditch effort, after cases were heard in court, the corrupt Compton Police, instead of being disbanded, it was absorbed into the sheriffs. And it's actually one of the corrupt Compton police officers that ended up being involved in the project by the feds to take down Lee Baca. Yes, Lee Baca can trace all of his legal troubles back to the disbanding of the Compton Police, and instead of actually getting rid of all those police officers, he can trace all of his problems back to absorbing those corrupt police officers into the sheriffs. One of the other things we found out in the corrupt Compton Police report is that Reggie Wright Jr. was in Keith Davis's, drug dealer Keith Davis's, pay-o book. And why is that significant? Well, it just shows us that that drug trafficking was going back all the way till then. And the corrupt Compton Police report also says that Reggie Wright Sr. was always wanting to know about raids before they happened. And when Russell Poole interviewed Kevin Hackey also confirmed in the aftermath of the Tupac Shakur murder that the raids that happened, there was a pre-raid that was done by Reggie and Reggie. And so they knew what they were going to find that next day. And doesn't it just make sense that there's a conflict of interest here? You have Death Row Records that's being run by Reggie Wright Jr., and you have Reggie Wright Sr. that's covering for Death Row Records. It's a huge conflict of interest. You have murders that happen. The Bobby Finch murder is one that either Reggie Wright Jr. knew about as it happened or before it happened. We don't know which. But then you have the person that handles the homicide is Reggie Wright Sr., and lo and behold, the murderer is never discovered. And so what we're seeing is a clear pattern of corruption, and Reggie Wright Jr. and Sr., who have now been indicted on drug trafficking charges, and it all traces back to the 1990s, could have been taken off the street if the DA's office had just done their job. But instead, they gave special treatment to Reggie Wright Jr. and Sr., they gave special treatment to the Compton City Council, and they made a witch hunt on Omar Bradley. It's now time for everybody out there to demand that the DA's office now be investigated for their ties to corruption. That's what needs to happen now. It's coming full circle. The testimony of Doug Sanders has just completed the loop. The dots now all connect. And now that Reggie Wright Jr. and Reggie Wright Sr. have been arrested on drug trafficking charges, it's time that we can clear all of these murders that happened. The murders where they were in the vicinity, where they failed to return fire, where all of these things that happened with Death Row Records, where Reggie Wright Sr. was the lead investigator in the homicides, and nobody was ever caught. Isn't it time that we get the authorities to stop terrorizing the people by going after the corruption inside of the sheriff's, inside of the DA's office, and throw the book at Reggie Wright Jr. and Reggie Wright Sr. and every single person that has been protecting them this entire time.
I got a baby girl in this world, so I ain't got no choice.
Man, I know
Y'all either gonna take me out or ride with me,
things like
and I put that on everything.
hard times and haters, yeah, but that's okay. I'm a hustler, and that won't change. Hustling.
Don't trip, you know? I know things is hard right now. You looking for a job, you out there hustling. Money gonna come your way, just don't trip. everything, just don't trip. I'm hoping I can see a brighter day. I see my daughter gotta spend the night today. Cause I just hit my knees sometimes and pray. And when I wake up, I hear them shots spray. Every day in the hood, it's the same thing. Young niggas in the streets trying to gang bang. Selling crack in them packs trying to maintain.